We go now to events unfolding along one of the world's most strategically sensitive waterways, the Strait of Hormuz. In the last hour, local media in southern Iran reported a series of explosions near Bandar Abbas, near islands off the southern coast, and in areas close to the strait itself. Eyewitnesses described sounds of blasts and flashes on the horizon. State television carried a sharply worded military statement, and officials on the ground gave brief, urgent accounts as the situation developed. An Iranian state television report quoted what it said was an informed military official saying, and I quote exactly, an act of aggression by the invading United States military against an Iranian oil tanker. The broadcast went on to say, and again I quote, the enemy's aggression came under Iranian missile fire and were forced to flee after sustaining damage. That account, delivered as breaking news, framed the incidents as an exchange between Iranian forces and what the state Tament called U.S. military elements. At the same time, local reporters described explosions near Bandar Abbas, the island south of the Iranian coast, and in the approaches to the strait, locations where commercial shipping, naval vessels, and oil tankers commonly transit. Those are the core claims being made on Iranian state media. An attack on an Iranian oil tanker, a prompt Iranian missile response, and the U.S. characterized in the statement as the aggressor, sustaining damage and deporting the area. These are serious and consequential allegations, and they come at a moment when tensions in the wider region are already elevated. Officials in Tehran also told reporters that the armed forces were engaged and that the response was directed at what they termed the enemy aggression in the vicinity of the strait. At the same time, Iran's foreign ministry was reported to have acknowledged receipt of a proposal from the United States. A ministry spokesperson identified in local rep, ordering as Bakai, confirmed that Tehran had received a U.S. proposal and that it was under internal review. The spokesman said they were focusing on finalizing or consultation, internal reviewing here between leadership level, and that following that review, Iran intended to exchange messages through mediators. As the spokesman put it, and I quote, "We are open to negotiate," a brief but consequential line that suggests diplomacy remains on the table even as military events are reported. Officials said those exchanges were taking place through a third party, and local reports named Pakistan as the channel for those messages. The Iranian statement described follow-up steps in these terms, that messages would be exchanged through the mediator, the Pakistanis, and upon that exchange messages between the United States and Iranian through the mediator, the Pakistanis will see the response, and after that going forward, that phrasing reflects how Tehran described a process of sage exchange and internal review prior to any public response. To unpack why these developments matter, it helps to recall what the Strait of Hormuz represents. It is, in simple terms, one of the global oil system's choke points. A large share of the world's seaborne oil passes through this narrow waterway between the Persian Gulf and the Gulf of Oman. Any disruption there, whether by mines, missiles, naval vessel encounters, or attacks on tankers, has immediate implications for maritime safety, insurance rates, shipping routes, and global energy markets. Even brief reports of explosions or military action in or near the strait tend to ripple through markets and regional capitals. The geography is also important. Bandar Abbas is a major Iranian port on the Persian Gulf, opposite the island chains that sit at the mouth of the strait. Islands such as Qashm and others are strategically located near shipping lanes. Operators of commercial vessels, from tanker masters to energy company, as in charters, closely monitor any reports from that area. Military vessels from multiple navies routinely operate in and near the strait on patrols and escort missions. That crowded and combustible mix creates a high risk that a localized incident could quickly escalate. What we heard in the reporting just now is a classic example of how the fog of conflict shapes early accounts. Local media described explosions and quoted military sources. Officials used the language of aggression and response, and diplomats, according to the foreign ministry spokesman, are quietly exchanging messages by way of a mediator. For journalists and for audiences, that combination raises immediate questions that are not yet answered. Which vessel was struck, if any? Were there casualties? Which U.S. unit, if any, was involved? What do both sides want now? De-escalation, a diplomatic exchange, or something more? What we can say with confidence, based on the official statements carried on Iranian broadcasting, is that Iranian officials are framing the incident as a defensive military reaction to a U.S. action against an Iranian oil tanker. They say Iranian missile fire targeted U.S. forces in the area and that those forces withdrew after suffering damage. Those are the claims on the record from Iranian state media at the moment. That meanwhile, the foreign ministry message, again carried by Iranian outlets, indicates Tehran has received a diplomatic proposal from Washington, is reviewing it at leadership level, and intends to continue communicating through an intermediary. The language used by Iranian officials reinforces the idea that Tehran is simultaneously pursuing two tracks: public militarized responses in the field and quieter diplomatic exchanges behind the scenes. That dual approach, hard power at sea alongside soft power in diplomatic channels, is familiar in crises between states that have a long history of mutual suspicion. Those are the opening facts. For any listen or trying to make sense of the situation, a few broader reminders matter. First, independent verification of early claims is often limited. When state broadcasters report military statements, they are quoting official sources. Other parties may release conflicting accounts. In fast-moving incidents near crowded sea lanes, video and social media footage can be ambiguous, misattributed, or manipulated. For that reason, international naval authorities, commercial shipping companies, and independent monitoring groups typically take time to confirm what happened, to identify vessels, and to assess damage and casualties. Second, the political context is unavoidable. The United States and Iran have a long, fraught history of confrontation and competition, and incidents involving commercial ships have been flashpoints before. Accusations of interference with tankers, shadowing of naval vessels, and attacks attributed to proxy forces have repeatedly raised the risk of unintended escalation. In that context, the presence of an exchange of messages, as Tehran says, is occurring through a mediator is significant. It suggests that both sides may be, at some level, weighing options to manage the crisis even while military statements and public rhetoric remain confrontational. Third, the involvement of a third-party mediator, as Iran reported, is notable. When channels between capitals are strained or severed, states frequently rely on intermediaries to convey offers, clarifications, or proposals. The apparent role of a regional actor in relaying messages between Tehran and Washington, if confirmed, would reflect a practical desire to keep a communication line open without formal public diplomacy. What might come next? In many crises like this, we would expect a few parallel developments. Military and maritime authorities on all sides will heighten alert levels and monitor shipping. Diplomatic channels will intensify consultations to clarify positions and reduce the risk. Fifth miscalculation, commercial shippers will reroute or delay transits while assessing risks, and international organizations with responsibility for maritime safety may issue guidance to mariners. National capitals beyond Iran and the United States, anxious not to see a regional conflict spread, may also press for restraint and encourage de-escalatory steps. At the same time, headlines can move swiftly from an initial incident to a larger political story, particularly if a major asset, a warship or a commercial tanker loaded with crude, is damaged or if there are casualties. In such cases, options for response multiply and consequences widen. Escalatory responses can include targeted strikes reprised by proxy actors or increased naval deployments. Equally, effective diplomacy can diffuse tensions quickly if both sides see a clear path to avoid further exchanges of force and to settle immediate operational questions about navigation safety. We should also underline the human dime. Nan Shin. If an oil tanker or commercial crew were struck or endangered, men and women at sea could have been injured or killed, and those on shore, families and colleagues, would be shaken by uncertainty. Commercial seafarers, port workers, and the small communities near maritime facilities often bear the immediate human cost of incidents that then become geopolitical headlines. Protecting civilian lives and ensuring safe navigation through international sea lanes are core responsibilities that intersect with strategic calculations. Finally, there are economic reverberations to consider. Even preliminary reports of conflict in or near the Strait of Hormuz can affect energy markets, shipping, insurance, and the price of maritime freight. Market participants react to risk, and perceived disruptions to flows of oil can have rapid effects on energy prices worldwide. For countries dependent on seaborne crude, the practical result is immediate concern about supply security and the potential economic consequences for importers and exporters alike. In the coming hours, the key things to watch will be any independent confirmation of damage or of which vessels were involved, official statements from Washington and from international naval commands, any clarifying messages from the mediator that Tehran has named, and crucially, whether Tehran's leadership decides to make public the substance of the proposal it says it received from the United States. If the foreign ministry's remark that we are open to negotiate proves to be more than a formula, there could be a diplomatic window to lower tensions. If instead further military exchanges are reported, the risk of miscalculation will rise. For now, the facts that we can relay to you are these. Local Iranian media reported explosions near Bandar Abbas and nearby islands. Iranian state television quoted a military official who described an earlier U.S. action against an Iranian oil tanker and said Iranian forces had fired missiles, prompting the U.S. units to withdraw after sustaining damage. And Iran's foreign ministry said it had received a U.S. proposal that was under internal review, that messages were being exchanged through a mediator, and that Tehran remained, in its words, open to negotiate, while also referencing aims such as ending the war on all fronts and the status of the strait. These are serious developments in a volatile region. We will continue to monitor official statements, independent reporting, and verified information about any vessels, casualties, or material damage. We will also watch for any immediate international responses, changes in shipping advisories, and any steps taken by regional or global actors to stabilize the situation. In tense moments like this, the next few hours often determine whether a single incident becomes a contained episode or a wider confrontation. As these events unfold, the immediate priorities remain clear. Establish the facts about what happened at sea, protect civilian lives and maritime safety, and preserve diplomatic channels that can prevent further escalation. We will bring you verified updates as they become available, and we will keep tracking both the military and the diplomatic threads of this developing story. For now, the Strait of Hormuz, vital to global energy flows and a perennial flashpoint of regional tension, once again lies at the center of international attention.